who'll start us off.
Yeah, always a little unique. There's a few players that, even though he's breaking from that, watch out, 9-ball, that same side rail, he pulls the cue ball out a little bit. I think he's gotten snookered here to open. Maybe has a little bit of a look at the 1. Very difficult rollout situation if he can't see the 1, though. May go for this. I don't think there's probably any match history here, but you never know. Euro Tours. I'm sure Sergio has played a few of those. Now Albin, a player that definitely uses the shot clock when we're playing with one, but here in the early stages, no shot clock, so he's not going to be in any hurry.
Yeah, well, early last year, he won the Championship League pool in Milton Keynes, which was a big televised event to kick things off for 2021. And there was no shot clock there the first couple of days. And I don't think it did him any favours, because he was getting inside his head a huge amount. If things went against him, rather than just getting on with the shot, he would take his time over it and remonstrate with himself and with the pool gods for a few moments before he'd actually get down and play. So I don't think it worked to his advantage then. It was only after the shot clock was brought in midway through the tournament that he started to play better. Anyway, we'll see how that plays out today. Gary Wilson, I can tell you, has now arrived at the table to play Blaine Barkas.
And I think that's very similar to his win last year in the Premier League pool.
But that is last year I'm talking about.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay. But he won the first 2 years, correct?
Well, it was the Championship League in 2021.
That's right.
And then it was restaged as the Premier League with a different format. But it was a successor, really, to that event. And yes, he did win it again.
Yeah, and I know he started off struggling in both of those events before. I believe he beat Joshua Filler in the final this year.
Yeah, he did beat Filler, having beaten David Alcady in the final the year before.
So ball in hand here on the 1. He's got options on the 2. Both can lead towards the 3 pretty easily. But after we saw Chris Melling and a Joshua Filler who waste no time, this will be a much different complexion as far as when Albin's at the table. Don't know much about Sergio's game.
Still looks a bit frazzled, doesn't he? I mean, you're bound to be after you find yourself running to the table and turning up late. Probably feels a little embarrassed by those circumstances.
Well, you could see he's still taking pretty deep breaths, so may have been on a bit of a jog into the arena.
I know a lot of these pool players are into their fitness and exercise these days, but that wasn't really the time to be going for a run.
Yeah, I used to do that a little bit, you know, on purpose, though. If I felt like I was in a nervous situation or a little anxiety before a match, I would take a nice stroll around the building, heavy walk, maybe get the legs going a little bit, get the heart rate up. But I always had time to settle myself, so that's a big difference there. Now these guys will, like Albin, the big favorites in these first and early rounds, will not do much different, but very much pay attention to what's going on with the table and how it's breaking, thinking of future matches.
Yeah, very comfortable start for Albin Ouschan, easing his way to the opening rack against Sergio Lagunas. But this is something that these formats and the increased number of big televised open events will bring, Jeremy, isn't it? A chance for these players to get the experience of taking on top guys, playing in this environment, and that can only help them as they try to make their way in the game.
Yeah, I think it's really one of the only ways, or one of the crucial ways, to get to the position you want. in the great game of Nineball.
You can end up playing the top players in a Euro Tour event or something like that, but it doesn't really compare to this sort of setting.
That's right. And about to kick off on table number 2. I think that's going to be a very close match, even though I know the credentials of Gary Wilson, don't know his game really, but Blaine's a very tough competitor.
I think he doesn't really know his game either, and judging from his pre-tournament comments, this is very much a step into the unknown for Gary, and he's here to see how he gets on. I think he was inspired by seeing Judd Trump play at the US Open.
Well, you can see him putting together his, what I think is his break jump cue. Albin Ouschan back at the table. He won't change the break spot. And the more I look at Sergio, the more I feel like I've seen him maybe play a tournament in the U.S., maybe the U.S. Open last year, possibly. Quite a few traveled from abroad for that event after Matchroom has taken it over. And this is ideal to start game number 2. Watch where the 1 ball's at. You're going to see that a lot from Albin.
Albin Ouschan was looking to make all sorts of history at the World Championship just last month in Milton Keynes. Feels a lot longer than that, actually. He was looking to win the title for a 3rd time and also go back-to-back. Would have matched Earl Strickland in both departments. Wasn't to be. Shane Van Boening did beat him in the final. Although he did become the first player to get to the World Final on 4 separate occasions. So he did make some history there, even if it wasn't quite what he was looking for.
And still very much in the early part of his prime, in my opinion. So some impressive things already, and definitely more coming from Albin Ouschan, along with this really opening here in rack number 2.
Dimitri Nyong'o has beaten Rico Deeks in that match we were talking about. 9-8, that one is finished.
Probably one of the most quality setups here as far as a competitive match in round number 1. We're going to see more of them, of course, but playing all ball fouls, winner break format, races to 9 here early. That will change later in the event.
So a run out from the break for Albin Ouschan, continuing a very comfortable start. He leads Sergio Lagunas by 2 racks to 0. And the man who beat him in that World Final, Shane Van Boening, we'll be seeing him on this main table a little later. Have you been talking to Shane much since the World Championship, Jeremy? How does he feel now that he's finally shaken off that tag of being the best player not to have won the World Crown?
Yeah, we've spoken some, but it doesn't take much if you know Shane to just see a real refreshed guy. And I think that was the leading up last year. He made some runs at another U.S. Open, I thought, before, I believe it was Aloysius Yap that really kind of stopped him in his tracks and asked me a little bit about Switzerland. He was a little upset that I was right by the lake. You know him with his fishing.
Absolutely, right? He would have been right at home there. Still, he's got his world title to compensate for that.
Yeah, now the 1 ball near the cue ball. I don't know of an open pocket, though. And yeah, Shane's in a great place. He's going to be a tough guy to beat. He just gets motivated for the winter break format. A little bit tighter pockets.
Gary Wilson, the professional snooker player, has looked pretty sharp in the opening rack over on the other main table against Blaine Barkas, leading 1-0.
Yeah, Blaine missed a pretty easy 5 ball after a really nice shot on the 1 and the 2. And maybe a sliver of a pocket here. I'm not sure. Going by the pink 4.
It's an unusual situation, that match on the other table, isn't it? Because obviously Barkas, the more experienced pool player, but when it comes to playing in the spotlight on one of the main tables at a big event, well, Wilson obviously miles ahead because he's got so much experience of that from snooker.
Yeah, I put, yeah, you could see him just using the bottom half of the pocket there at a light speed, so very settled here early. That being Albin Ouschan, which is usually the case. I mean, we've seen him struggle a little bit early in tournaments, but as he goes, he gets better and better. And Blaine, I put him kind of very similar to a Nicolas de Leon as far as a player that just keeps playing these big events. You're going to see him. It's going to take a while to maybe win one, and we'll see if it ever happens, but he's going to improve constantly, get used to the situation, the travel, being around all the great players. Kind of feel like, you know, as a whole, a guy like Gary Wilson or a lot of the snooker players, you might say, they can kind of get on a roll, you know, just keep pocketing balls. They get a few opportunities at the table, gain a lot of confidence in this 9-ball.
I think with Trump at the US Open, it went pretty much as we expected, that he got through the early rounds comfortably enough, but once he came up against one of the top players, by his own admission, he just wasn't able to cope with the greater nous of Jason Shaw. Anyway, back here, Albin Ouschan must feel like he's enjoying a practice session early on here.
Yeah, couldn't do much with the cue ball, so he's got to take a longer shot on the 5. I doubt he works it across. Probably just takes the shot on the 7. Maybe he is coming across. Oh, he did. Beautifully struck. And I think maybe at first some of the, or at least maybe before, some of the snooker players, I saw maybe they didn't respect the game of 9-ball at times until they start playing it, and then they start to realize there's a bit more going on than people think. Sometimes these players will fool you how easy they make it look, right?
Well, Albin Ouschan certainly falls into that category, and it's another run out from the break, and in no time at all he leads Sergio Lagunas by 3-0. Michael Schneider of Switzerland, 6-3 up against Hassan Shahid of Britain. Winner of that will play Marco Teutcher. Niels Fine is through. He beat Spencer Oliver 9-3.
Yeah, I think David Al-Kaidi with a win just moments ago, maybe 10 minutes ago. So him and Ruiz, the top 2 Spaniard players. We do have another here on this match.
Yeah, David Al-Kaidi got through 9-0 against Daniel Bakirkloglu of Sweden. And Al-Kaidi will play Russell Thomas or Jim Telfer in the next round. Thomas leading that all-British clash 3-1 at the moment.
And lost the cue ball a little bit, a friendly kiss. I think he was heading towards that side pocket. Didn't quite see it there on the replay, but you could see Albin putting his hand up a little bit. I wouldn't say, you know, a perfectionist, but someone who is always going to be concerned with any mistake, but does understand the game and has all the tools. Big shot here early. Play this with a light speed coming across. The players know they can, at certain angles, the real small angles coming into the pocket, they can use a bit of the side rail, excuse me, the side rail pocketing of the ball. I wonder if he goes around the 5 here or just straight up the table. I would just go like that, yeah, straight up the table. Blaine Barkas has tied the match at 1 apiece.
Yeah, that's against Gary Wilson.
Again, Blaine from one of the biggest pool towns in America, Houston, Texas.
Yeah, an announcement going out for one of the other players who's due at the table.
See, just using a bit of the side cushion. And these players, win or not, they want to play a solid match because they know the tournament gets tougher and tougher as it goes, and they will not play again till tomorrow, the guys who advanced today. And ladies, excuse me. Kelly Fisher with the opening win. Maybe no one on the planet has a better record in 2022 than she does in competitive pool. I think she's won every ladies event she's played in.
Yeah, and she's performed well and got some decent results when she's played at this level as well. Well, Sergio Lagunas was absent when the match was starting, or was meant to be starting. Might as well still be at the moment because we've not seen him since the first rack. Albin Ouschan just racing away with this one now. Another break and run, and he leads 4-0.
And just keeping an eye on Gary Wilson playing here. And then I think he's trying to get a handle on the cue ball so far. He's had a couple of shots that were maybe not necessarily knowing exactly where the cue ball was going, but you can tell quality potting balls.
The winner of this will play Ioannis Charlaftis of Greece, or even Coelho of Portugal. They meet a little later. At the moment, it looks very much like it's going to be Albin Ouschan going through to that match. He's totally on top here, 4-0.
Well, we're probably going to get to see Sergio here, unless Albin takes on the jump shot, which I don't think he will. Wants to take advantage of his knowledge here on the push out. Gary Wilson out to a 2-1 lead now. Push out here is pretty difficult though. Can't really roll out up table so easily. Pretty easy snooker if he comes down on the bottom end of your screen. Leaves an offensive shot. Could roll out behind the purple 5. It's pretty touchy from that distance to a kick shot behind the 1, but I think against Sergio, and I'm sure these guys have played before, that he doesn't want to roll out too dangerous and maybe get Sergio to the table in a very plus situation.
May just have noticed there a moment ago as we were watching Albin sizing up that shot. David Al-Kaidi sitting table side, giving his less celebrated countryman a bit of moral support, which he really needs at the moment.
Yeah, here I think you would feather the 1. Touchy shot, you have to have a lot of speed control. There's a good look at David.
Yeah, I think he knew. He knew that we were looking at him. Saw himself on the big screen. Hope he's not supposed to be somewhere else. He's been rumbled now.
I think possibly he goes for this cross side bank, which, Sergio's got to realize also. He's going to have to take some games away and put some racks together, so maybe should have went after this. Looks like with a high ball, you can come one rail maybe into the pink, maybe up and down. I think he's going to go offensive here.
Well, that's not a bad effort at all, but what's he got positionally?
Not much, really. Probably a safety of some sort. Can run the. He's looking to see if the long rail bank went, because the 6, 7, and 9 offer a little bit of a backdoor safety and a little bit of lack of experience there from Sergio, I'd say, not taking on that bank. I know Albin didn't come away with the positional shot on the pink 4, but all right, trying to play the 4 underneath the 8. Doesn't appear the cue ball will squeeze by the 8 near the rail, so pretty good shot.
Yeah, and what you're saying is absolutely right, that maybe could have made a different choice there. Lagunas has got to try to force the issue a bit. At the moment, it looks like he's nothing to lose anyway, because the match is slipping away from him as it goes. And the net result of that exchange of play is that he finds himself back in a bit of bother and still being kept under pressure.
Yeah. Again, not something you're going to set up for, but a cross-side bank on the 1 is something that 9-ball players usually recognize. Always the offensive first. He's got to go around the purple 5, I think, a couple rails here up on the backside of the pink. Oh, he's going across the table. Bit tougher kick shot, I think. Yeah, a little harder to judge. Albin just with ball in hand. I believe the 6 will play in the lower left, so just about, I think, getting back to the center of the table roughly after he plays the 5. Now he's looking on the left side of the 7 to play the 6, so I think it does play from both sides. Just want to push forward with the cue ball a little bit here. Get a little bit of a natural angle to possibly get a little closer to the 6 here in a moment. That's how I thought he would play it originally. That just keeps it to where he doesn't have to fool with the 9-ball at all, and no real uncertainty left in the rack. I played a few snooker players back in the day, of course, some in some big moments. Steve Davis in the Moscone, which I always thought he was a genius, even playing 9-ball. But I played some of the ones not as bigger names, you might say. And one thing I found, and I was a pretty cool customer usually, so snooker players with their tempo around the table and what you might feel like, they don't respect the game as much, you can get a little irritated when they keep clearing them.
Yeah, you're referring there to Gary Wilson, who we're watching over on the other table as we see Albin Ouschan go 5-0 up here, and Wilson leading 3-1 and in play looking for 4-1 against Blaine Barkas. I see he's already been given a pool nickname, the Tyneside Terror, emblazoned on the back of his shirt there. He looks like he's enjoying it.
Yeah, very, very quick action with the cue. Little kind of cock of the head, a little like filler, you might say. On the opposite side, though, the right-hander. Yeah,
he'd be well noted for that technique. Gary Wilson was the world under-21 snooker champion all the way back in 2004. But took him a long time to make any sort of impact on the professional game. He's making a quick impact in 9-ball pool here because he's got a simple pot, which he's just converted to lead Blaine Barkas 4-1. Back here, are we heading for yet another whitewash?
All right, the 1's got a lot of speed on it. Cue ball got kicked. We'll see how it turns out. He's got a nice shot, and I think he's got a little bit of an angle. Oh, well. Yeah, I think this is a makeable ball, and he does, I think, have a little angle to get to the backside of the 2 to play it in the same pocket as the 1. When you're close to the ball, it's actually harder to generate movement off of a small angle, but I think he's all right here.
such a shift in the game in recent times. Its traditions are so much based in your home country, Jeremy, and then we saw the Philippines become such a stronghold of the world scene. But in recent times, there's been this new generation of young continental European players like Albin Ouschan, Joshua Filler, coming through and really shaking things up on the world stage. And Ouschan has had as good a record as anyone over the last few years. Done so well in team events, brilliant record with Austria in the World Cup of Pool. And he's already got an outstanding Mosconi Cup record.
And those two are just the cream of the crop. And what's so impressive is how many Europe has developed, and you got to believe more coming.
I mentioned the Philippines there. Dennis Orcolio 5-0 up against Anders Edvardsson. Sanjin Pelovanovic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Very promising young European player, in line with what you were saying there. Level at 3-all with Neil Margosian.
Yeah, it's about being efficient these days with the clearing of the table. You can see how the balls are breaking, so it's not going to be a lot of clusters you deal with. It's about keeping your opponent in the chair. As the tournament moves on, you'll see the break changes a little bit. The pockets break in a bit more. You'll see some more competitive pool, of course, and a little bit more situational pool. Albin now just making a decision on how to play the 6. And a bit, you know, I mean, he's had a lot of offensive shots, but a bit more of a, I wouldn't say fast, but faster offensive pace for Albin than maybe we expected.
So for the 4th time in the match, it's going to be a break and run for the 2-time world champion, Albin Ouschan. He now leads Sergio Lagunas 6-0. And you know, Jeremy, it will be easy to say for a player like Lagunas that it can be a learning experience for him, but he's not really been much of a feature in this match, so it's hard to know what really he can learn from this, apart from turn up on time, I guess.
Yeah, not many pluses. Not much physical time at the table. Not a great decision passing on a rollout early, but definitely, I think he played the U.S. Open 9-ball last year. Definitely have seen him before. Haven't seen much of him in this match.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, if anything, that was the key moment for him, if there was one in the match, when he made that decision on the push out. And sometimes you got to push the boat out a bit. I mean, ultimately, what's the worst that can happen to him? He can lose 9-0. Well, we've seen other players do that on this table today, and I think it's pretty much what people would have been expecting anyway. So, got to force the issue a bit. He didn't there. And it's been one-way traffic since. 6-0.
The other one's going to come around again. And the thing is, you not only have to push it, period, really. There's going to be a ton of opponents, but you got to know Albin's really not going to make many mental errors. And then the physical really is, I wouldn't even say a close second. It's probably about the same. It's not going to make many physical errors either. So when the guys roll out, they have a good idea of doing something in a positive manner. So you got to look to take it away. And we're going to see that happen again, or situations happen again in future matches. All right, he's got to kind of kill the cue ball here, Michael. Used every bit of that pocket.
Yeah, he's played that well, and you got to feel he's playing without any pressure whatsoever at the moment. He's so much in control here. His opponent simply hasn't got started in the match at all. news of Mika Immonen, who we saw have that remarkable capitulation to Shane Van Bonen at the World Championship. And he's just gone 5-2 up on João Grillo. Mario He, Albin Ouschan's fellow Austrian, and regular partner, is in action against Simon Ayres, and he's leading 2-0 in that one.
And Mario struggled at the World Pool Masters. Really only got to play that one match, or maybe it was 2 matches maybe, but no, 1 match I believe, but just didn't play his game against Dimitri. World Pool Masters is so great because there is that instant pressure, right? One and done kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's like real top players all the way. You're not going to see a contest of this nature in something like the World Masters. Everything's on center stage, big names. And here comes break and run number 5 in this match for Albin Ouschan. An absolute landslide at the moment. He now leads 7-0.
Do we have the team for Austria this year in the World Cup? Has that been determined with Max Lechner in the mix?
Yeah, the teams are actually going to be announced next week. The World Cup of Pool in Brentwood, in Essex. Austria, as we say, have had that great record with Albin Ouschan and Mario He in recent times.
You know, if that record, that great record, wasn't what it was or what it is, I think Max Lechner gets that spot with Albin Ouschan, but he's had a pretty decent year so far. Blaine Barkas has cut the score to 4-2, I believe, over there, and just broke the balls in game number 7.
I notice the 2 players, Albin and Sergio, having a chat between racks, and a lot of laughter, a lot of smiles, and I guess that's really all you can do in this situation, because at the moment this is like watching an Albin Ouschan practice session, and he only needs 2 more racks to round things off.
A little on the 50-yard line, even though he can see the 1 ball. Not sure he can really go offensive.
Yeah, and just to round off, come back to what we were saying earlier about those World Cup teams. It will be announced next week, but I can tell you it will be Max Lechner partnering Albin Ouschan. That has been confirmed.
Well, and that just shows you what kind of year and what kind of player Max Lechner is to take, you know, kind of grab that spot away from Mario He with the success that Austria has had. Nobody's had more success, at least from what I can recall, than Albin Ouschan and Mario.
Your nation will be represented by Shane Van Bonen and Skylar Woodward. Are you surprised that the USA haven't done more in the World Cup over the years?
Yeah, a little bit, just because the combination we've had in there have been a combination that have played a lot of doubles together, and you know, whether it have been Shane and Sky, you know, Billy and Skylar, and any combination they put up there, really guys that mix well together. But it's a tough event, and sometimes, you know, you get a little off track with each other, or maybe one guy's playing a little bit off. Can certainly affect the other player, but I still expect them to do well. Takes a bit of rolls. Big long shot here for Albin.
Yeah, Lagunas unable to put Ouschan under even a modicum of pressure with the previous shot. And a chance here for him to continue the procession.
It looks like he's fallen a little straight on the 2 also. I don't know if he can fall behind the 4 going forward, I believe the 4 does play up in the same corner if he can get above it. Looks like he's going forward or maybe just sizing it up. No, he's going to take the cut shot on the 4 in the lower left. Got to watch out for a side pocket with the cue ball. And Albin looks in good shape now. Pretty easy, just falls between the 7-8 with the cue ball, comes around for the 7 in the side off the 6, 8 in the opposite side, and you can see a 9-ball just kind of laying there.
Dennis Orcolio now leading Anders Edvardsson 6-1. JJ Fall and Paul Taylor heading for a close finish. That's 7-all between the South African and the British player.
Good to see South Africa back in the 9-ball mix. You know, during Cardiff they had some players, and I kind of thought that country might go in the right direction for 9-ball, but a little bit quiet maybe in the last decade.
Well, Lagunas did get to the table in this rack, but he left a pretty straightforward pot for Ouschan, and the Austrian has done the rest. And very quickly, he's made it to the hill. We could be heading for another whitewash here. Ouschan leads 8-0. Different story on the other table, though. JJ, Blaine Barkas, holding on well against Gary Wilson. He's pulled it back now to 4-3 behind.
Yeah, he made a nice clearance there in the last rack, that being game number 7.
Mika Immonen now 6-2 lead against João Grillo, so starting to pull away there, perhaps.
The referees have their hands full today. A lot of work.
Yeah, Desislava Bojalova was just racked over on the Wilson-Barkas match and then has run over here to do it on the main table. But this is just the nature of an event like this. You've got 256 players, so many matches. There are only so many officials you can realistically have, so it'll all be spread a bit thin for the first few days.
And Gary Wilson now, after a scratch on the break in game 8 by Blaine Barkas, has ball in hand with a very doable layout. He's kind of questioning where he should play it with ball in hand. The 2 goes in the side with the 3 near, so doesn't really require much cue ball travel.
Yeah, and from what we're seeing, even with reasonably limited preparation, Wilson seems to have got at least the basics of top-level pool in his head.
Yeah, there's many ways to run a rack a lot of times, so his cueing instincts will help him, as of course making balls the way he does will never, you know, hurt. I think it'll be maybe some situations, some certain types of safeties, maybe some kick shots. Of course, the rollout, which was always so amazing by Steve Davis. I've found him to be one of the most difficult guys to play against when it came to the push out, even with limited experience playing 9-ball back in the day. Like right there, if you saw Gary Wilson come across on this 4-ball here, just kind of a simple shot, but these balls are bigger, right? They don't take the spin, or they do take the spin more. It just depends on the shot.
Back here on this table, what's the thinking of that push-out decision by Ouschan?
Yeah, well, definitely not offensive. He could play a pretty easy shot hitting the right side of the 1, coming dragging the cue ball behind the brown 7. Delicate from this distance, but you have the 6 and the 7 to help you out. But Sergio's definitely got to take this on no matter what he plays. kind of the shot I was talking about. Looks like very good speed control and his first really successful shot of the match.
And got a ripple of applause as well, perhaps from his fellow countrymen looking on.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that, and he's going to the air with the jump cue here. He's got to dig on this a bit. Can't really afford to go forward. But anytime you're cutting the ball, it should kind of come backwards a little bit. He's got to gain position on the 2. He's not going to mind where this one ends up. I don't believe so anyways. Similar shot coming up for Sergio than he had just off the rollout. Marcus just missed the 9-ball to tie that match at 4 apiece. So Gary Wilson will be get rewarded there on an easy one.
Yeah, Wilson had a very simple 9-ball, so he now leads 5-3, more than halfway to victory on his debut in this setting.
One thing for some of the guys that don't play a lot of American pool, 9-ball pool, that being Gary Wilson, of course, is early in the tournament we're using the template. So the break-off should be a lot easier overall as far as pocketing a ball. And I'm sure the guys will recognize that as well. All right, maybe don't recall many offensive opportunities for Sergio in this match, and he's finally here on the 1-ball after a couple nice safeties.
Oh, but that looked very snatchy.
Snatchy's a good word. That was very quick.
Well, I hope for his sake he doesn't get too demoralized about it all. Yeah, he's struggled, he's played bad shots at times, he's just not really got into it, but realistically he had very little chance of making much impact against someone like Albin Ouschan.
Yeah, and he came in, arrived late with smiles, was down 4-5-0, smiling and having a chat with his opponent in between racks, so I think he's going to be okay, even though he's going to get to the 1-loss side early.
Guess he just would have hoped to make a bit more of an impact on the match than this. I still feel it was a mistake on his part not to avail of the couple of minutes practice he was offered. You could say maybe it was good manners, but ultimately the fact is that he did still have that entitlement.
In an event like this where you're not going to get a ton of practice time on your match table, seems like every player would take the extra 2 minutes no matter what the situation if it was offered. I know Albin would.
Well, you can be quite sure he wouldn't have thought twice about it in that situation, but then he probably wouldn't have arrived late to the table in the first place. But this looks to be all over now. Sergio Lagunas, I've no doubt, once the draw was made, would have looked forward to the big occasion of playing one of the best players in the world, multiple world champion. It's a day he'll always remember, just not very fondly.
Yeah, this event has huge repercussions on a lot of 2023, of course. Rankings starting to develop. And again, the Mosconi Cup.
Yeah, this new world ranking system we've been talking so much about, and The inaugural list was effectively designed by a committee, but the players throughout the year in designated events are playing for points, which will then come into effect at the end of the year. And from that point on, the rankings will always be based directly on results. It'll be fascinating to see who emerges at number 1 on the first list under that format. And although he wasn't put under any pressure whatsoever, you have to say that's about as close to perfection as you're ever going to see in a race to 9 from Albin.